What's wrong with Mike?
What's wrong was the era in which my taint exploded, and much of the medical professional community was confounded by this. This one's gonna take a while, guys. Well, hi everybody. Hi, Mike here. First, please allow me to lay down a couple disclaimers, if you will. This is the 14th episode, but it's really kind of the 13th episode. I'm kind of doing that like Las Vegas hotel floor thing with this. In other words, I kind of have a bit of a phobia about 13. I don't know why. It's completely stupid. It's not backed up by any sort of empirical evidence whatsoever. But if I'm lifting weights, I either got to stop at rep 12 or 14. I got to power through two more. I hate when I land. I hate when anything lands on 13. And so this is the 14th episode. But you know, it's really the 13th. It's like if you're staying on the 14th floor in a hotel in Las Vegas, it's really the 13th floor. Yeah, so I don't know. It's stupid, and I'm sorry about that. I'm also going to apologize in advance for this podcast. You are going to learn a lot about me, but you're also going to learn a lot about my body, and this might be potential too much information for you. So now's your time to tap out, if you will. I'm just telling you that there's going to be some talk about my nether regions, and it's for good reason. One, I want to allow people who have been bounced around by the medical system, by the healthcare system, maybe they get to laugh a little bit at my pain. And there are some funny stories lining this sort of miserable period in my life, semi-miserable. I mean, mentally I was not miserable completely, but and so look, here's like a legend. Here's a key to this episode. I'm going to refer to my penis as my thingy. I don't want to say penis a bunch of times. And I don't want to say testicles. So it's going to be my thingy and then my thingies. Is that okay? My left thingy and my right thingy. That's the code for this. Because I just want to make it playful. And I don't want to use actual medical terminology because I think it's less funny and maybe more awkward than already. Frankly, if you know me, you probably don't even want to know this. And like I said, that was your reason to tap out right there. So are you guys still there? Okay, cool. I'm generally embarrassed about this. I'm quite embarrassed, and I'm being honest with you. But why would I tell a story about my thingy and my thingies? Well, I waited until now because I didn't want to lead off with this. Like in episode 1, I wanted you to get to know me a little bit better, and now you get to know me a lot more. And also, frankly, it's No Shave November. Now, No Shave November is when men grow a mustache because supposedly it's going to raise awareness for men's health and cancer. That's what the internet says. Social media, you see these people like, I grew a mustache and I'm doing it for men's health. Well, I think that's more than stupid. All right. First of all, I've had cancer. That's part of this story. When I was 16 and 17, I had cancer. And let me tell you, if you're going through chemotherapy, you ain't growing shit for hair. All right. You can't grow a mustache. And, even when I was 16, 17, even like my pubes fell out. All right. And you'd be like, oh, that's cool. Like chemical manscaping, huh? Well, no. You ever try to lose your virginity in the 80s with no pubes? Do you know how hard that is back then? Go rent a dirty movie on videotape. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I digress. All right. Those things are stupid, and awareness doesn't cure anything. So I'm hoping that a long, really too much information story will allow a male or female or anyone to know that, you kind of got to be your own doctor in some ways. Yes, it's a crapshoot out there, and I'll just leave it at that and let my story tell the story. But I don't like No Shave November. It's dumb. Don't even get me started. You remember the ice bucket challenge? That was when you dump a bucket of ice water on your head, And you do it all for ALS. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm going to dump a ice bucket on my head for ALS. Okay, I'm going to stick my thingy in a pickle jar for lupus. That makes just about as much sense. So these things are stupid. Sorry, I came out a little hot there. Came out a little hot. Let's back up a little bit, shall we? And I'll take a deep breath. A little over 4 years ago, concluded a multi-year period where I had a real kind of scary problem. And it's still a mystery. It was caused by one of two things. One, it's either my cancer history and the lymph system. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm actually so fortunate. I've actually lived long enough to outlive the name of my disease, my illness. When I was a kid, 16 and 17 years old, it was called Hodgkin's disease. And I guess disease didn't sound specific enough, so now they call it Hodgkin's lymphoma. So there's just non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and there's Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was fortunate enough to have Hodgkin's lymphoma because it was much more curable than regular lymphoma. But I'll tell you what, I don't want to go back there. And if I had to, if this interests you, I'd be happy to tell you my story from when I was 16 and 17. That's another thing. But the idea was maybe my lymph system has scar tissue in it and I don't have good drainage. That was what one of the good doctors told me. The other thing was I began bicycle racing. I started out as a runner. When I just kind of got addicted to exercise, did a bunch of half marathons, the hamstrings couldn't hack it, got on the bike, long story short, spent over a decade racing bicycles, and, that's probably not it's a combo of both or something, because I was putting in like 9,000 miles a year. I was commuting to work via bicycle, and, I had a aluminum single speed. I was concentrating all my weight on a very tiny area, and all the weight plus 20, 30 pounds in my backpack, which had my change of clothes, a bunch of books, a bunch of papers I graded, and my lunch and whatnot else. And I think it took a toll on things down there. So I just wasn't feeling right. And I decided I'm going to go through the system, and I'm going to go to whoever my insurance says my primary care doctor is. Now, I hadn't been to the doctor in a while, and I can talk about that later, but I kind of had a gap of, being a guy who was active in my early 40s, maybe we'll say. No, maybe in my 40s. I hadn't been to the doctor for a while, so I just picked whoever they told me that my primary care physician would be, because my insurance had switched so many times. I just went with whoever they said, and it was a woman. All right. I'm going to call her the bad primary care physician. Now, in the story I'm telling today, there's 4 doctors. There's a bad primary care physician, there's a good primary care physician, there's a bad urologist, and there's a good urologist. Not because she was a woman necessarily, but this woman was the bad primary care physician. I'll tell you why. I go in there and I say, hey, would you mind checking me for a hernia? Like, I think I might have a hernia. I'm not sure. And by the way, I have a paranoid, fear of having a hernia. My grandfather died with a huge one, and like in his scrotal area. And I'm like, oh, geez, here we go. Did I get that gene? And, he would say it was the size of a baseball, and it would go back up when he laid down. I'm like, please don't let this be the case. But I feel kind of weird down there. I got some strange mystery pain. So she goes, okay, I'm going to check you for a hernia, and I'm going to check your testicles. But first, because I'm a woman and you're a man, we're going to do this in the presence of a chaperone. Yeah, so chaperones aren't just for, junior high dances anymore. They are, apparently this is a new thing, I'm thinking. And I'm thinking, well, this is for everybody, So it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do this. I'm all about being on the up and up here. I'm not some sort of perv. So she goes and says, okay, we're going to get the chaperone. And so it's the chaperone's like another nurse. And she comes in there. That's right. The chaperone is another woman. And I'm thinking, that chaperone was for you. That wasn't for me or both of us. It was for you. Now, think about that. Now look, I have two daughters and I am not some sort of misogynistic guy if you know me. But think about it. Let's say I'm the doctor. I'm a doctor and a lady comes in and says, hey, I need to be checked for, like my breast tissue or something like that. And I say, okay, I'm going to examine you. But first, I'm a man, you're a woman, so I'm going to get a chaperone. I get another dude to come in there? Now, I get it, okay? If you listen to the episode where I was interrogated by a police officer, I know that men commit more sexual pervery. I just made up the word pervery. I get it. It just doesn't feel good when it comes down on me. All right? I as a guy who's not a perv. Now, granted, I'm going to tell you all about my thingy and my thingies. As a guy who's not a perv, it doesn't feel good. And it makes me not want to go back. You know what I'm saying? So that would be, if that didn't happen to me, that would beat all mustaches if I didn't have that happen to me. And then, I've gone, one time my wife had a kidney stone and I went and sat in the room with her while they were trying to figure out what's going on. They were going to go to the CAT scan. And then I hear the, nurse like, do you feel safe at home? And I'm like, okay, I get the whole, that's a question now. Do you feel safe at home? Men commit more sexual pervery. We commit more violence. I just don't like it. Okay. And now to top this off, I get a phone call the next day. She's like, I don't think you have a hernia. I think you're fine. And I get a phone call the next day. Hey, this is the doctor so-and-so, the bad doctor's office. And the person working there says, we got the test back. I did have I peed in a cup. I figure, okay, maybe I got a UTI. I don't know. Yeah, and your gonorrhea and syphilis test is negative. I'm thinking, they didn't even tell me that they ran that test. I didn't even know they were going to run that test, and I could have told them that I didn't have gonorrhea. Is gonorrhea even around anymore? I guess it has to be if they're running tests for it. But so we both agree that I should go to the good urologist. The bad one's coming later, but I go to the good urologist. And actually, I was very familiar with this good urologist. And actually, I believe she let me just say, go pick someone in the network. So I don't think she, the bad primary care physician, picked the doctor. I did, because this doctor I went to 20 years prior. And why did I go to a urologist in my early 20s? Well, that's because I had 4 months of chemotherapy, and they blasted me pretty good. And one of the side effects of chemotherapy is you could become sterile. Okay, so I guess chemotherapy kills cells and kills the cells which undergo meiosis or whatever. But my count was really low when I had my initial treatment, and the Hodgkin's lymphoma does that too, lowers your sperm count. But so he checked me out way back when, and I went back to him, and he was great back then. He was extremely patient with me. Now, I told you I was going to tell you too much about me, because one of the things back when I was in my 20s, I had never had the whole finger in the thingy test. Actually, I shouldn't have started with thingy and thingies, and because the other thingy is my butt thingy. So there's a lot of thingies, and I should have probably come up with different designations. So he puts his, does that finger thing, and I pass out. I'm a nervous guy, but I literally, after it was over, I sit back up, and he's like, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go and send you to the hospital, and da-da-da. And it's kind of like in the movies where the voice starts getting echoey, and I start graying out. And I'm like, Doc, I'm not hearing you. And he understood, and he laid me down, and he came back, and I was fine after I read a couple magazines. But then he sent me off to the hospital, and this was great. And here's what they did back then. I don't know if they do this now, but I have to test how viable my sperm are because my wife and I want to plan a family. So this was when I was in my mid to later 20s. And you go to this counter and they give you a cup. All right? And you're supposed to catch the stuff that comes out of your thingy in the cup. And then they give you a list of instructions and they tell you to go in this room and it locks. And someone got to tell me if this is how they do it still, because they should send you home, but I guess what they got to do is analyze it like really quick after you're done. So it's got to be done on site. And so there's that. And then it says, if you need to, use visual aids on the south wall. And then like there's all these magazine racks and there's all these dirty like Playboy and Penthouse, whatever. I forgot what magazines they had because I didn't touch them. Okay. And then they said you could sit on the couch. There's a lazy boy recliner there. And I'm like, first of all, one, I am not using the magazines because, look, I mean, hey, I got some of the most beautiful memories up there, right there, at my disposal at any time. And they're still there, okay? I don't need nothing to help me there, and I'm not touching those things. Secondly, I'm not sitting in the lazy boy. Because I don't want to describe to you why, but I'm not sitting there. I had to sit in like a regular like desk chair that was kind of there, like it was awkward, but I did it. I gave him the sample, and then turns out I've got 2 kids now. Everything turned out great. But I have to tell you this. That room was right next to pediatrics. So in that room, mixed amongst the, magazines and stuff, I don't know how it got mixed in because it was the next room. There was like a Winnie the Pooh book. And it was like a story book, like very simple children's book. And it was Winnie the Pooh. And when I got done, I wrapped up my cup thing and took care of business and cleaned myself up or whatever. And I said, and I left the Winnie the Pooh book right on the lazy boy just to mess with the next guy. Oh, but it all ended up, good because I got 2 kids and I'm mostly good. So I go to the urologist now and I thought he'd be impressed. I said, hey, I went to see you 20 years ago. And now, because you helped me get my sperm analyzed, I have, I got 2 kids, and I thought you'd like to hear that. And he's kind of like, okay, whatever. Because he probably sees so many people, and he's probably thinking, well, I didn't do anything. You're the one that did and it was a little bit of work. By the way, my count was kind of low, and I guess my percentage of good swimmers wasn't that, great. But he comes in, and before I tell him that, he's like, so this says here that you are unable to have erections? And I'm like, no, that's not me at all. And he goes, oh, and he shuffles a few papers. Oh, okay, this one. So, so that was the only thing he ever did wrong, was he got me mixed up at first. So he sends me off, or he examines me, and he's like, yeah, there's a little bit more down there than I think there normally would be in a normal set. And he's like, let's go, because of your history, let's send you off to get a CAT scan. And by the way, I'm not saying it's great to be a cancer patient who's coming back, and a cancer survivorship is, is loaded with all sorts of survivorship paranoia. Every little lump you get, every little whatever, like what I'm going through right at this point with that, is always like I'm going to die. So it's not good to be a cancer survivor, except that you survived. Of course, that part's good. But then the one good thing is if you say you have something weird going on, you're getting a CAT scan. They're not going to, it's going to get paid for. And then they took me for an ultrasound. So CAT scan, ultrasound, so a little bit of beat down on my left thingy. And I end up, and by the way, I've had 2 ultrasounds on my thingies, and it was awkward both times because the technician who did the first one was like super hot young lady, And it's kind of like you get to cover up with a towel, but still she's down there like moving around on it, and they squirt this gel on you down there. And then she let me take a picture of the screen, and I put it on social media. So that was the first one, and then I went for another one, and I'm getting it mixed up. But then basically, they can't find out what it is. The good urologist calls me, and he's like, you look healthy to me, and I think you shouldn't change a thing. But he's like, I do have one theory, and the theory is that because of your chemotherapy, you have scar tissue in there, and now the lymph is not moving good. And lymph doesn't have a pump, so it's going downhill, and it's hard to get it to go away. And you see these people who have like bad lymphedema, and their like right leg is like gigantic or something. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just kind of keep moving around. And he's like, don't change a thing. But I'm like, what can I do about it? And he's like, nothing. That's kind of tough. And then so I'm kind of like, okay, I guess I gotta live life now. So I just kind of don't really pursue any more doctor stuff, um, and I try to carry on with life. But then this accumulation of like what I think is lymph is continuing, and it's even like I sent my brothers a picture. I'm like, hey, you guys ever, because it's your brothers, you share a little bit of the gene pool with each other. I'm like, you guys ever have a period where for a few days your thingy is like looking like it's pregnant? And they're like, no. And I sent them a picture. By the way, this was back when I had to do it on a camera with a digital card in it and then email it to them. It was before phones. And so, no. But then, so, a few years goes along, and this is continuing. And then, I'm just kind of like, okay, some days it's good down there, some days it isn't, but it's not going away. And it's kind of concerning because now this is going to be too much. But like in the morning, you get like, your thingy wakes up before you do. And it's, big. And that's good. But when you got this stuff in there, it's like too much for the skin to hold, and it hurts. So that was kind of concerning, for me. And then it's hard in different ways that I'll just leave out for you. So, but then what started happening is I would get like hot down there and red down there. Remember, it's No Shave November. Don't get disgusted at me. This is for men's health awareness. So that would be like a local fever. Like if you got like stung by a bee and you had an allergic reaction, you have a local fever on your elbow, and it never really goes to a full-blown fever, but the skin is hot there. And for a while that was like, okay, that's all it was. And then it went to like a day later to a system-wide fever, and I'm shivering and I'm feverish. And so I go to the urgent care because I didn't want to go back to bad primary care physician. I knew I couldn't just roll in on the urologist. I mean, I'll talk later about when I go to bad urologist, you can't even get in there for 3-6 months. So I go to urgent care, and this guy walks in, and he looks like the doctor. He looks like Guy Fieri, the chef guy with his spiky hair. He's got like spiky hair, and he's like, hey, man, and it's kind of funny. He's like, hey, man. Never had a doctor call me, hey, man, He's like, so let's, okay. And I tell him what's going on. I'm like, I'm swollen up down there, and I'm hot, and I got a fever. He's like, all right, let's take a look. So I drop my pants, and he goes, whoa. I'll tell you that is not the response you want. Let's take a look. Whoa. And so he's like, okay, look, you got a circulation problem, and I think I know what this is. And I'm like, oh my God, finally, I find somebody. He's like, this is what it is. Like all this Wi-Fi that's all around. Like, look, this is just a side interest of mine, but I'm usually in Columbus doing facelifts, but I thought I'd fill in today. So I got Guy Fieri does facelifts, and now he's looking at me down there with the whoa, and then he's got a theory. So I listened to it, and he's like, well, with all the Wi-Fi and stuff, like people aren't grounded with the magnetic field of the Earth. And I'm like, I thought Wi-Fi was, infrared radiation, I guess. I didn't think it was magnetism, but okay, And he's like, so what you got to do is you got to sleep on this mat. because no one's going outside anymore and connecting with the earth, and it's getting all their circulations all bad now. And I'm thinking, well, that's really something. Like, why isn't everybody else suffering the exact same thing? How come he didn't have the next guy come in, whoa, and then whoa, and whoa? I mean, so I'm kind of like, this is not passing my sniff test. I need some sort of antibiotic. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you your Western medicine today, but I want you to answer my email and get into my study. And I just blew that off. So the very next day, by this time, from bad primary care physician to now, I knew I needed to connect with my old doctor who was actually kind of a friend. My wife worked with his wife in the pharmacy, and we got to meet each other. We played hoops a couple times, and I'm like, I gotta bite the big one and just go see him, because I was going to him for regular stuff and not really telling him about the stuff going on. But then, being only a couple doses of Cipro in, I decided that he needed to see, and he looked at it and didn't say whoa or nothing, but he's like, okay, yeah, we're going to give you a shot. It's a really strong antibiotic. It's going to be right in your butt. Oh, and by the way, when I come in, the nurse is like, well, okay, I went to the urgent care, now I'm coming to you. And she's like, well, what did the urgent care say? And I told the nurse, well, he says I'm not grounded with the magnetic field of the earth. And she just kind of looks at me like, starts scribbling in her, like, on her pad. You start scribbling on her like little paper. So then the good doctor who knows me comes in. The first thing he says is like, before he examines me, he like, whoa, and he drops this pen. He's like, there's an MRI machine right down there. It must have been that the magnet pulled it down. So we have a couple good laughs. He analyzes me, examines me. He says, okay, you need to establish, I'm going to give you a Cipro. I'm going to give you another Cipro with refill on it. And so I told him, like, I'm scared right now. And he's like, you probably got PTSD from some of this stuff. And I already told him, like, I have anxiety, and like sometimes that is hard on you down there because like you tighten up, your thingies tighten up and go inside sometime if it's bad enough. So he sends me to what is going to turn out to be bad urologist. And we're almost done with this story here, guys. So, and I go, it takes me 6 months to get in to see him. And now everything's fine down there because I wasn't having one of these bad, episodes. So you don't really believe me. And I say, hey, well, look, in case I run out. And I think even in between seeing him, I had another bad episode, but I just took another round of Cipro and it went away. So I was kind of running low on Cipro, and I'm like, well, can I just have some Cipro just in case it happens and it takes me so long to get into you? And he's like, well, no, we don't just hand out antibiotics willy-nilly like that. So no, you have to have a condition and we can prescribe it. So I guess I would describe this as a very much a period of darkness because I couldn't get in to see him if I had a problem. I was able to get in and see the physician assistant, who was a woman, which makes it awkward, and she wasn't that great either. Actually, I said there'd only be 4 doctors, but she was not a physician's assistant. She was a nurse practitioner, excuse me. She comes in, she's like, well, I have an intern with me today. Can he observe our session? And she gives me the test thingy up the butt thingy thing, and he watches. I'm thinking, this is awful, And then I told her, I said, here's what I did. I saved a couple Cipros because I only got like 24 hours before this becomes a system-wide fever. I've been through like 4 rounds of this now. I know I got a little bit of time. I can look down there, see if I'm beet red, and then I can get on the Cipro and it won't go system-wide. And I've missed that a few times. I mean, the first few times it snuck up on me and I thought I was going to die. I remember thinking, I'm shivering in bed with a fever, and I thought, I am not going to see my daughter go to college. And there was another time when my youngest daughter, I'd be in the bed. I don't know if this is time number 3 or 4 or whatever, and I'm like, hey, sorry I can't come to dinner. I'm sick again, So this happened enough times that I knew I needed to get on the Cipro to make it go away, and I'm getting scared because I'm wondering if my body, no one's going to prescribe me Cipro unless I go see Guy Fieri again, and whoa! So I'm really scared, and it's overcoming my whole psyche, and I feel like I'm not going to live a long life. So I went and I bought some Cipro. You guys might not like me for this, but I want you to know I was in survival mode because these episodes made me feel like I was going to die. And you can do it. You can buy anything from India. I bought it from India online. I didn't trust using the credit card. My dad had done it. He had bought statins from there. I don't know why. It's cheaper for him. For me, I wanted a supply of it, and I still have it today. I know that's probably less than legal. And you could be like, how do you know it's not sugar pills? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a chemist, and I know that one of the best chemical sensors you have is right in your mouth. So I busted open a half of one. I took one of these tablets and I busted it open, and I busted open one that came from the good primary care physician, and I tasted that one, and I tasted the other ones. They tasted exactly the same. The same level of awful. And so I'm in here, I'm looking for answers, but I feel like I'm armed with some medicine now. I'm just scared to hell that the efficacy of that medicine is going to decrease because maybe my body will become immune to it, like build up a tolerance like one would do with THC or alcohol or some other drug, and it just stops working. And then I'm going to die. And then, I saw the good doctor another time, and he says, you just go on another one, but I'm scared. And so I ask for an MRI, can we do an MRI just to see what's going on, or another CAT scan? And the good doctor, he's like, MRI is better than CAT scan for this kind of stuff. So we order out an MRI, and he says, well, they didn't do the groin. They didn't approve that. They approved it of your chest. And I'm like, I don't have a problem in my chest. So you know what? Insurance didn't pay for it. But I did. I paid $900. I shopped around. I went to a good MRI place about a half an hour, right between here and Cincinnati, and I paid $900 for an MRI with contrast. And I'll tell you what, if you ever had an MRI, it's kind of tough because you got to sit really still. And the other thing is they're loud as hell. I didn't realize how loud they are, the cycles. And they kind of set you up. They give you this switcheroo, right? Because you think like, oh, this is going to be, what kind of music do you want to listen to, Mike? And they put headphones on me. And I'm like, I want to listen to some like Thelonious Monk, let's put some jazz on there, like piano, jazz and stuff. And then, at first start out, it sounds pretty good. And then the cycle kicks in, and then they tell you, you got like the MRI DJ is in there. He's in the booth, and he's the guy running the test, but he's like, well, it's the guy who sets you up with the music. So he's in there, and he's telling you how long each scan's going to be. And he's like, kind of like, okay, Mike, this one's going to be about 7 minutes scan. It's a pretty long one. Let's hang in there, okay? It's a different sound every time. And he comes back on, this one goes out to Betty in Centerville. This one's about 3.5 minutes long. Cock, cock, cock. I'm like, are they saying cock? It started to sound like it. And when I left the MRI, the MRI guy's like, good luck with everything. And I'm like, what's that mean? Every time you get a test, they're like, good luck with everything. What's that mean? What'd you see? They're not going to tell you. Unless you really beg them. Then they'll tell you. So I'm looking for answers. I got no answers. And you know what? It just stopped. 4 years ago on my birthday was the last time I had anything. So we're talking 4 years and about a month now. I sit different now. I try not to squish let's see. You got the front thingy, you got the left thingy and the right thingy, and then you got the butt thingy, and then you got in between that, a guy has let's just call it the prostate thingy, okay? And you can't sit on that too much, and I'm sure bicycle racing can cause that to get infected. That could have been the culprit. The good primary care physician said maybe I had an abscess. I don't know what those are, but they're never good. Those things can kill you, I think. I sit different now. I gotta sit on like a hard chair. I can't sit on like a soft chair in my area there. It's kind of like it doesn't let circulation happen. You know how you gotta like, this is a terrible example, but you can kind of smother someone with a pillow, but you can't smother them with like a 2x4. You know what I mean? So I sit different. I don't sit on the prostate thingy. I sit like I started driving, and my friends know this. I started driving and I put in the car like a life preserver, like a U-shaped. It's not a donut because you don't want the thing in the front. There's donuts. I don't sit on a donut, but I sit on like a toilet seat cover now when I drive. And if I really want to impress somebody, I put that in the back seat. And I really don't even think I need it anymore. But you don't want to mess with success, right? If you got something that works for your health and you got to sit a certain way or you got to do whatever, you don't mess with success. I stretch more now. I try to drink more water. I'm mostly off the bike. I take a long ride in the fall or in the spring to go pick asparagus in Cedarville, but usually I'm standing up. Guys and gals, if you're on that bike, lift your fanny off that seat every 5 minutes, man, and get good shorts. So that's what I do different. Oh, and that illegal Cipro goes on every trip I take. I still to this day, I won't go anywhere, even to work. I'll take 2 of them with me. They're in my bag. I will take that to me, and they're all in the freezer downstairs. And I don't have a lot, but it's been 4 years, and I'm feeling pretty good about something changed. Abscess maybe just cured itself, whatever. But I'll tell you what, every day I go pee, I look at myself down there. And when it looks normal, and I mean mostly normal, am I trying to say I got a little bigger down there? I guess that's the only good outcome of this story. Is I got a little bit of swagger now, a little bit, but mostly not like before. So every time I go pee and I look and it has like that pale color of like everything a white guy has that's never seen the sun, like your tan lines, it looks that color. And I just thank God. I do. I say, thank you, God. And I'm agnostic, but mostly, but I'm just like so thankful that that's over with. I hope it's over with. So, I need to ask you now. Was this too much information? Just enough information? Sorry if it was too much information. I was keeping this story in my back pocket and I had to choose No Shave November. And you know what? It might have been too much information, but at least I didn't grow a stupid mustache. Thanks for listening.
Have a question for Mike? Email him at mikecanistero@icloud.com.